Me fumble through simple things as announcements. So now we're going to try and get through a whole sermon, and we're going to see how that goes. So let me get set up here. If y'all hear the cracking in my voice, I'll go ahead and apologize in advance. So Tony asked me, I think they're traveling today, so he asked me to fill in for him this morning. So today we're going to be working out of Luke, specifically Luke chapter 24, verses 13 through 35. So this is the story about two travelers on the road to Emmaus. If you don't know the story, you can definitely go back and read it later. But basically, so this is 3 days after the crucifixion of Jesus. He has not made his resurrection known yet. So, but they have found the empty tomb, but his resurrection is not known yet. So these two travelers are traveling back from Jerusalem. They're sad, they're disappointed, they're confused because they thought Jesus was going to be this great Messiah. Well, Jesus sees them and hears them conversing on the road. So Jesus disguises himself as a stranger and then joins them on their journey. They begin a conversation. They don't know it's Jesus. To them, it's just a stranger. They engage in conversation. Jesus asks them, why they're so sad, because it's obvious they look sad. They tell him Jesus was supposed to be the one to redeem Israel for us. Now the tomb is empty. We saw him die on the cross. We don't understand what's going on. So then, of course, Jesus, being Jesus, uses it as a teaching moment and begins to describe to them the prophecies of the Old Testament and how those prophecies lead up to the suffering and the death of Jesus. And then once they get to the end of the three of them, once they get to the end of their journey, they invite the stranger in to eat. So they all three sit down. The stranger, which we know is Jesus, he takes the bread, he blesses it, gives thanks, breaks it, and gives it to them. At this point, his true identity is revealed as Jesus. The two men see him as Jesus, and then Jesus disappears. So then, once they see this, they immediately run back to Jerusalem and tell the disciples what they had seen. So we'll dive a little bit deeper kind of into that as we go. But one thing in the entire book of Luke, one thing we see is Luke's interest in the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. He has this attraction to not only the resurrection, but the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies that lead to the suffering and death of Jesus. So for this story in particular, without using that verb fulfill, this signifies the theme of that fulfillment. So this story is to show how natural it is for us as humans to struggle to have that doubt with the reality of the empty tomb, because we may not necessarily understand it. But this story also represents that Jesus will directly intervene to counter that human doubt and make the truth of the resurrection known to us. So, and this story it illustrates the importance of believing in the fulfillment of those Old Testament prophecies that lead up to the suffering and death of Jesus. So the first verse, I kind of want to go through a couple of verses here. Verse 16. Verse 16, Mel. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Sorry, I'm jumping around on you, Mel. I'm sorry. So, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Short, simple verse. So the reason I want to call this out, it's not that Jesus was disfigured in any kind of way, like from the crucifixion or anything like that. It was intentional. He intended for them not to recognize him. And what this tells us is that our understanding of everything, it comes from Jesus. Our understanding of the Old Testament prophecies, all of that, it comes from Jesus and it comes from the Word. So, and this will also play in later in the story when we talk about hearing Jesus teaching the old, the prophecies and the breaking of the bread. So then we'll go to verse 19. And he said to them, "What things?" and this, what things is kind of like, I hate to use this in the same sense, but it's kind of like Jesus playing dumb. You know, this big event that happened, the crucifixion of Jesus, and the preceding verses to this are, you know, are you the only visitor to come to Jerusalem to not know what has happened these past 3 days, or something along those lines. And so, like, they're shocked that this person doesn't know what happened. So then I think, you know, when Jesus says what things, Jesus wants to hear their perception of it and what their understanding of what had happened. He wants to hear that specifically so that he knows he can correct them. And believe me, he's going to use it as a teaching moment. But like I said, this leading up to this, they were looking sad and confused and disappointed. So, you know, they had this hope that Jesus was the Messiah, the chosen one. And when they saw him nailed up on that cross and died, and then heard that the tomb was empty, they started to have doubt. Oh, well, maybe he wasn't the chosen one. Maybe he wasn't the one that God sent to redeem Israel. So then, this verse right here is set up, and Luke sets it up to show the lack of understanding of the Old Testament prophecies. So it's to further engage the story, the lack of understanding that sometimes we have and that these two travelers have of the prophecies prophesizing Jesus. So then we'll jump to 25 through 27. And he said to them, O foolish ones and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. So this is Jesus talking to the two travelers, disguised as a stranger. So if you go back to verse 26, Mel, for me. So, was it not necessary? This refers to the fact that the entire Old Testament had shown how God had brought his chosen leaders first through suffering and then into their glory. This is a pattern in the Old Testament. God's chosen leaders first had to go through suffering and then enter into glory. So, and this says, so therefore, the Messiah himself, in the fulfillment of all of these prophecies, would also have to suffer before entering into his glory. Which, you know, and this glory is also foreshadowed in chapter 9 of Luke. But this glory comes at his resurrection and even fully more at his ascension into heaven. So when it says, if you can go to 27. So when it says, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, this refers to the entire Old Testament. And it also kind of summarizes like all the scriptures as well. So Jesus explained to them not only how these Old Testament prophecies are about Jesus, you know, are about the Messiah, the coming Messiah. You know, these are historical patterns, and all of the activity, all of the prophecies and scriptures in the Old Testament ultimately lead to the suffering and the death of Jesus. So then, the verses 30 and 31. When he was at the table with them, he took the bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to them. When it says he, this is the stranger or Jesus in disguise. When he was at table with them, he took the bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to them. So, and their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. So I wanted to call this one out because this one has some similarities to the Last Supper and to feeding the 5,000, because it's that intimate setting of breaking bread. All right, so verse 32, rolling right on through. So verse 32, they said to each other, did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened to us the scriptures? So again, this one, I really want to call out, did not our hearts burn within us? So before Jesus revealed himself, they are still traveling on the road. They still see Jesus as just a stranger who is explaining the Old Testament prophecies to them. They don't know they're talking to Jesus. But after they realize that it's Jesus, they look back on that conversation on the road and they're like, oh man, yeah, like now our hearts were burning while he was explaining this to us. That is because Jesus, disguised as a stranger, was giving them hope and was convincing them that, hey, okay, maybe we're wrong. Maybe there is a misunderstanding of these prophecies, and maybe this is truly the Messiah, the chosen one. Okay, so now that I've dived a little bit into these actual verses, so how does this apply to us as Christians today? So again, going back to the beginning, Jesus deliberately closed their eyes so that they didn't recognize him. He did this because he wants the truth to become evident, and he wants that recognition to come through direct divine intervention in the opening of the word and the breaking of the bread. So, there's that seed of doubt found within the travelers. They're sad, disappointed, confused. All right? And then when they learned about the empty tomb, now it just kind of piles on to everything. It's possible that, they could feel abandoned. This was supposed to be their Savior. This was supposed to be the one who redeemed Israel. And now they don't understand what's going on. But Jesus showed up. Jesus was with them. Jesus helped them through that sadness, that confusion, that feeling of abandonment. Jesus was with them. So for us today, this tells us, hey, guess what? Jesus is with us. Jesus is walking beside us through the good times, through the times we're sitting on top of that mountain, but also through those times that we are feeling sad, disappointed, or overwhelmed. Jesus is walking there beside us. I promise you, he's there. You put your faith in him, I promise you, he's going to help you get through whatever situation you're facing. He is there. So, on the road when he was explaining the prophecies in the Old Testament, they still did not recognize him. All right? So it is important to know the word, but, and I'll get to this later. I'm actually kind of jumping around. But to be intimate with him, I'll get to that later. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm getting ahead of myself here. And now I done lost my place. Oh goodness. So the main for that point right there, the main important point is that Jesus is always with us. Jesus was walking with these men the entire time. Even through their sadness, their disappointment, their feeling of abandonment, Jesus was walking with them the whole time. So, move on to my next point. So, he accuses them of being foolish and slow to heart. Now, these two travelers had heard the Old Testament prophecies and teachings their entire life. Chances are they probably heard them directly from Jesus. They probably attended, before Jesus was crucified, as followers, I'm sure they attended some of his teachings. So they heard it directly from him. But yet, when the event happened, they were still sad and confused about it and didn't understand it. So, this is where it becomes important to learn the word. So what this, to know and understand the word. So what this does, this story represents right here, is knowing the word. It kind of provides a template, if you will, a template for the process of finding meaning. My own personal meaning, your own personal meaning with Jesus Christ. First, we start with encounter. We have all had our own personal encounter with Jesus, whether it's in a church, whether you're sitting somewhere and all of a sudden it hits you, that first encounter with Jesus. And I know we've all had it because we're all sitting here this morning. You're all sitting here this morning, so at some point you've had some kind of encounter with Jesus. So, you're here. Next is that exploration, getting into the Bible and studying about Jesus, studying the Word. The next one, and this is where, again, the story kind of follows this, misunderstanding. Whether maybe it's you're misunderstanding the Bible. Maybe it's you're having doubts for whatever reason. Something is happening in your life. You're having doubts. You have strayed away from Jesus, or you have let other things take over in your life. That misunderstanding. And this is why that next one is so important, re-engagement. We look here in the story of the road to Emmaus. Once, they had the encounter, then they had the exploration when Jesus was explaining the Old Testaments to them, the misunderstanding, the sadness, the confusion, the sadness, confusion, disappointment, and then the re-engagement. When they saw Jesus, when Jesus appeared to them in their home, that re-engagement. And within that re-engagement, there is a deeper dive into the Word. Because only understanding how the Old Testament and the New Testament work together to provide those prophecies, to tell the story of Jesus and what's to come, his suffering, death, resurrection, and the day he comes back, we have to take that deeper dive into the Bible. So we have to spend more time in this book right here so that we can gain that better understanding. Now, these guys right here didn't have the New Testament like we do today. They just had the Old Testament. Fortunately for us, we've got the entire story. They didn't. But for us, and when we gain that understanding, we see everything that Jesus did for us. Everything he did, is doing, and will do for us. So we learn, we've always been told Jesus sacrificed his life for us. As believers, we know that. But it creates a deeper appreciation when you read and understand what he went through, what he had to suffer for us, what he is continuing to do and sitting up in heaven fighting for us, fighting on our behalf every day. When you get into the Word, you begin to understand, you appreciate that. And that appreciation, it leads to a deeper relationship. It leads to a more intimate, deeper relationship with Jesus in which everything you want to do in your life, you want to do to glorify him because you appreciate everything that he did for you. So that's why it is important to get into this Word and to get that, not to just read it, not to wake up, and don't get me wrong, I'm very guilty of this. You just read the words. You just read the words and you move on. It's about understanding it. It's about that deeper meaning of understanding those sacrifices, those Old Testament prophecies, and how they connect to Jesus and the New Testament and what he is going to do, what he has to face, or in our instance, face, and what he is going to do for us. Whether he comes back or we meet him first, he is always fighting for us. And getting into the Word of Jesus is a way to truly gain that appreciation for that. All right. So, going towards the end of the story, and like I said earlier, they didn't recognize Jesus as being Jesus while they were learning about the Word on the road. It wasn't until they invited him in for a meal and they broke bread together that they recognized him. So this setting kind of has like a pastoral feel to it, and it's almost like the Last Supper kind of feel. It has that meaning. So in the Jewish world, this type of table fellowship was, not only did they share their food and meals and stuff, they shared their lives. So in the Jewish world, this meant that because of this sharing, those sitting at the table became one. In this case, in the road to Emmaus, Jesus was involved. So now this represents their sharing that unity with Jesus because they did it with him. He was there. So they did understand, they got that better understanding of the scriptures, but it wasn't until they were in an intimate setting with him. Praise him, you can come on up. So they weren't in an intimate setting with him. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. So, and I bring this verse up because Jesus is there for us. Jesus wants to help us. He is holding out his hand, grab my hand. But guess what? It's a two-way street. He's not going to make us. He's not. We have free will. He's not going to make us. We have to invite him in. We have to grab that hand. He's reaching out to help us. We have to grab that hand. And we have to glorify him. We have to invite him into our hearts, open our hearts. And y'all know what I'm talking about. When you invite Jesus into your heart, you feel that presence. You feel that comfort that he will immediately bring over you. You know when it happens, but we have to invite him. Just like these men right here invited this stranger into their home and broke bread, we have to invite him into our hearts. You know, just knowing the word is not good enough. We have to actually invite him into our hearts. Now, going back over those 3 points. So we invite him into our heart. We gain a better understanding of the word and gain a deeper appreciation of what Jesus sacrificed for us. And now we know for sure, because we did the last 2, we know for sure he's walking with us. That's how these go hand in hand. When we invite Jesus into our heart, we get that presence, that comfort. We know he's there. We know he is there in our hearts. The Holy Spirit is there in his heart. We get into the word. Lord, thank you for everything that you did. You gave everything. Thank you. And then we know that no matter what we face in life, whether it's good, bad, sad, disappointment, abandonment, no matter what, Jesus is there walking beside us. Always. He is there to help us. He is there to help us. He wants us to lay our burdens on him. That is why it is important we invite him in. We get into the word so we know, and we feel it in our bones. We know for sure that Jesus is there with us to help us get through whatever we face. He will not abandon us. He will always be there. To the day we die or the day he comes back, he will always be there to help us. Always. So one thing, and kind of to finish up, God sees our hearts. Jesus sees our hearts more deeply than we see our own hearts. So, he is there. Again, Jesus is there, waiting on us to take his hand. We have to take his hand. He is waiting on it. Whether you're at the beginning of your walk with God, or you're in that misunderstanding stage that I talked about. It don't matter what stage you're in, take his hand. He is there waiting on you. He wants to help us. He wants to help us get through it. But again, what else can he do? He gave everything for us. He died. He suffered for us. What else can he do? It's up to us. We have to run to him. We have to kneel at his feet, say, Jesus, I am here for you. All right? And then we have to hold on tight. This world is going to do everything it can to pull you from Jesus. The devil is going to do everything it can. It's going to try and sow every seed of doubt that it can. But we have to hold on with Jesus. Hold on to Jesus with all of our might so that we can cling to him, so that we don't lose that relationship, so we know that Jesus is there for us. Now, going back to more deeply, he sees more deeply into our hearts. These 2 guys, they're not one of the main 12. They don't have books in the Bible written about them. And to be honest, if it wasn't for this right here, they would probably never even be mentioned in the Bible. And they would have never dared to hope that Jesus would meet them on the road. All right? Nor would they have ever expected Jesus to meet them on the road. Right? They're just 2 guys who happened to see one of the most horrific events in human history. And now, they would have never seen that. But then once all this transpired and they found out it was Jesus, they ran back to the disciples in Jerusalem. They felt such overwhelming joy and happiness at what they had seen. They just made that long journey. They turned right back around and went back again and ran right back to Jerusalem to tell the disciples what they had seen. And then they had learned that Christ had come to others to show that he was still alive. And there was this overwhelming joy in all of their hearts. Yes, this is our Messiah. This is our true King. He has risen. And so I say all that to say, Jesus knew that happiness was in their hearts. That happiness, that longing of them wanting to see him as the resurrected, chosen king. But all of that happiness was overshadowed by the confusion, the sadness, the disappointment that they felt because of their misunderstanding of the prophecies. But Jesus saw it in there, which is why this is here. Jesus saw that happiness. It may have laid deep. It may have been covered under all that sadness, but it was there. And Jesus knew he could bring it out, even though these guys couldn't see it, and it's the same for us. You know, we may be facing something going on in our lives, and the happiness in our heart that we experience with Jesus may be overshadowed by all of that sadness, hurt, pain. But God sees deeply into our hearts. He will show us. I promise you, he will show us, and he will give us more than we desire. It's simple. All we have to do, invite him into our heart, get into the word, and we will know Jesus is there with us all along. He always will be. Like the song says, he never fails. He never will. He is always there with us. Now, as I finish up, the altar's open. If you are in the exploration stage, come explore with Jesus. If you are in the misunderstanding stage, here's the altar right here. If you just want to come talk to Jesus, he's right here. Lay your burdens on him. He is there to help us. He is there to get us through it. I promise you, he will not fail you. And I promise you, he will be with you, holding your hand every step of the way. I promise. Lord, we thank you. We thank you for all the sacrifices that you made.